I'm Melissa.
And I'm Lee, and we are busy mums, company founders, and all-round early learning nerds. Welcome to our podcast, Growing Little Humans.
Kids aren't born with a user manual, so each week we'll try and cover many topics that you guys encounter and worry about each and every day while you're raising your little humans.
On today's episode, we are joined by Chris Buswell, who is the Head of Education at STEM Punks. With a background in environmental science, education, and physics teaching, Chris is a highly regarded teacher in EdTech and STEM education. He has played a pivotal role in shaping international learning cultures and establishing educational partnerships across Australia, the UK, the Middle East, and Asia Pacific. Chris has won multiple teaching awards and is a recognised expert in strategic STEM education and pedagogical design. We're thrilled to have him here today to share his insights and experiences as a global keynote speaker and leader in STEM education. Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you with us.
Great to see you guys. Thank you for having me today.
So, Chris, let's start off. Can you just explain to us what does STEM mean and what are the impacts of exposing our children to a STEM curriculum?
Yeah, very interesting question, and it's something that I think has really come to light over the last sort of 5-10 years. We obviously think of STEM as the acronym, science, technology, engineering, maths, but it's far more than that. I think it's an opportunity for us to start thinking of our world, the changing world that our kids are growing up into, and how they can start becoming very active problem solvers and identifying challenges that might be in their local environment or their global environment. And STEM education allows a pathway for them to be those problem solvers and actually enact change within their world. So, well, I mean, STEM is very different no matter where you go. And whenever I work with schools, whether it be in Australia or overseas, I really try to work with school communities. So within the schools and outside of the schools to really understand what makes STEM for that community. And so we see different iterations of STEM all over the world. But there are some core fundamentals that hold it together. And that's that students are being taught how to identify problems using a framework, and then they're getting taught a pathway to really develop human-based skills to solve those problems.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much. And so in the early learning space, so the 0 to 8-year-olds, how do those STEM skills contribute to a child's overall development?
Yeah, as you guys both know, the time that kids are exposed to STEM in that early years is really critical. So the data says that around 6 years of age, students start to form biases towards themselves and their own dispositions and ability within STEM or particular career spaces. They start thinking about gender biases around what type of roles are aligned with gender. And it can really start to shape the way they perceive themselves in the world. So, we know that STEM encourages really core fundamental skills around creativity, being curious about the world, pathways to solving problems, thinking critically, but also working together. We know that we live in a world where we have access to a large network globally through digital means. And so we no longer have to have all the skills as individuals. We can work together to be able to solve problems. So in terms of early learning, I love the Australian framework, the early years learning framework, where kids get to co-construct their learning with their teachers. And so their opportunity for student agency to come into the front of the classroom. So they get to ask questions, they get to think about their world and go, I really would like to learn about this. And so the learning experiences are designed together. And I think that's a fundamental aspect of STEM and the opportunity for kids to think about how might I solve this problem and be the ones asking the questions. And those like raw skills at a young age are really critical in the way that students start to develop their own identity, whether that be a STEM identity or whether they begin to, see themselves as being capable in a variety of different spaces. But when it comes down to it, it's about giving students, young minds, an opportunity to have as much opportunity as possible later in life, because they've got a broad skill set and they're adaptable, they're resilient, and they're able to adapt to any change that may happen in the future.
And Chris, I found that really interesting what you're saying about that children are developing their own identities and biases by about the age of 6. And, you know, we're always hearing about how they're trying to encourage girls to be more exposed to STEM.
Yes.
And I guess, you know, that information actually shows why it's super important to be exposing children younger to a STEM program. And so what kind of age do you think is a good age to be exposing children to STEM? And because there's lots of ways, isn't there, that you can expose children to STEM? Because, you know, as you know, Melissa and I at the Wishing Tree, we're dealing with the 0 to 5 year age group, and Melissa's often telling me, you know, about STEM things that we can have included in our curriculum that will expose younger children. What are your thoughts around that, and what's a good age to be exposing them in some of the early STEM activities?
I think it's a fundamental age, and I think we're seeing the world change to recognise a real need to bring in STEM at that early age. And I think it's about ensuring we understand what it means to bring in STEM. You know, are we just doing science, or are we just doing maths in isolation? STEM is about an interdisciplinary approach to learning. So it's about bringing in a range of skills. We're not just focusing on facts and knowledge. We're developing all sorts of skill sets and using various tools and developing, as I mentioned before, those dispositions. So yeah, I absolutely believe, like, if I think back to when I was young and what might have potentially given me the spark to take my career, I think it was walking around the garden with my grandparents, and they would identify things in my environment that would make me curious, and that was a pathway for me to learn more. And so the learning process that I went through was, okay, so we've got a problem. How are we going to solve it? They definitely didn't give me the answers. They created a pathway for me to find that out myself. And I think that's what happens, you know, really well at a very young age group. As students progress past that 0 to 5 age group, they start forming those biases, as you mentioned before. And you know, when we talk about the data again, once you hit 12 and 13, it's a really critical age where students can like take one branch in the road or another, and it's very hard to get students to understand their own capabilities at that point. And if they don't take those leaps into certain subjects in school, whether that be in primary and high school, and beyond the schooling environment, start to explore their passions, start to really venture into the world that we have around us, then it can really cause them to potentially not take careers later in life. And as we know, 75 or 80% of the careers that are going to be in the future are going to have some form of STEM as a part of them. So it's really critical. And as we know, we've got a world that is being shaped by AI right now. We're moving into a very interesting time. So I think bringing in those skills as early as possible and developing human-based skills is really critical.
And I think that's really important that you're saying that early exposure to STEM is really going to lead students to girls to have as well, to have more confidence to move into those roles and start to drive that learning from an earlier age, rather than think, oh, that's not for me, that's for the boys, the maths and science. And I think also really important that you're saying that it's so interconnected. It's not just a standalone subject being taught. So I think that's, you know, really, really valuable information that parents aren't going to get a STEM comment on their report card per se and question that. So obviously, we always had the question about technology. So what role does technology have in developing those early learning STEM skills?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. So when I think of tech as a tool. It's something that we can use to solve problems. It can be used really effectively, or it can become a crux. But as we know, the type of careers are changing quite rapidly in our world, and students are able to use technology for a variety of different skill capability development. So, for example, they could use it to collaborate. They could use it as a tool to enhance creativity. You know, they might use it as an opportunity to learn more about the world around them. So I think it's about structuring opportunities, learning opportunities that don't make the tool, the tech, the focus. It's just a part of the learning experience. and they understand it's just one of the tools in their repertoire that they can use to solve those problems.
And Chris, there's a really, on the counter argument of that, we're also always talking now about, too much screen time. So how do you think we find that balance between, having too much screen time and hands-on learning with STEM?
Yeah, that's another interesting one. A little caveat, I don't have kids myself, so I think as a parent, you may be swayed in your opinion of that question. I think, there's a healthy balance there. Absolutely. Like we have a learning pathway that requires tech. I'm sure, everyone in the room right now would use tech in their role in some form or another. And it's about students feeling confident and capable using tech, understanding that tech is so rapidly changing. And so they need to be adaptable in that environment. And if we don't allow exposure to that, it stops students from being able to be confident and able to adapt to that changing world. But once again, screen time. If I was a parent, I would see the impact that it would have from a perspective around behaviour. I mean, the people that I work for at STEM Punks, I know when I go to their house to maybe have a coffee, and I go, well, it's very quiet here. I know you've got 3 kids. It's because they're on their screen. So it completely changes the dynamic of the environment. So I think it's really important that we just educate both kids and adults who are using tech that it's just a part of the learning pathway, and there are opportunities using the tech to develop skills, but it's also critical to explore the world that we live in other ways as well at the same time.
So it sounds like we really just have to, foster that curiosity in children and have early introduction. And I think just these conversations around awareness about what is STEM and how can we as parents and educators be ensuring that it's included in children's lives from an early age.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Lots to think about. I'm sure I'm going to have lots of questions after this podcast. So parents and viewers can get in contact with you. We'll share your contact details in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining us today.
And Chris, as a last message, can you recommend any resources to parents for that might give them more STEM awareness?
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of different resources online. I would recommend that if parents are really interested in learning more about STEM, jump online. There is obviously a variety of different programs that would structure learning. Like if we wanted to obviously build skills in computational thinking, for example, there's some fantastic programs online like Scratch Junior or Codable that will build students' skills in critical thinking regarding language and coding. One thing that I really love is Minecraft. So we use it a lot in our work at STEM Punks, and students have great capability in it from a very young age. When I was working at the Australian International School in Dubai, I had the 3 and 4-year-olds building future cities in Minecraft. So it's an opportunity for them to use a variety of materials, animate, and create scenes that they can then pitch and share to the class. And so it creates something that's tangible for them to be able to showcase. So STEM is such a diverse field. It's about getting hands-on. It's about learning skills in construction at a young age. It's about integrating tech, but it's also about creating communities. So I think if in the Saudi Arabian market, I would encourage any parent out there to look for other eager parents that are working in this space or have an interest and work together to create communities. And it's by creating these ecosystems and these networks that we get really, really strong STEM communities.
Thank you so much, Chris. Well, we'll share all those resources in our show notes, and people can reach out to you at STEM Punks if they want to. And thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope that everyone's got something out of our conversation about STEM.
Thank you very much, and all the best for the podcast.
Thank you. And here come the legals. Our podcast is purely brought to you for educational and entertainment purposes. We are just 2 hectic mums, and we are certainly not licensed therapists.
This podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of licensed or qualified professionals, and if you do need some help, please seek out some professional advice.